This is the Daily Technology Pulse podcast from Daily Computers, the preferred technology provider for public and private sector organizations throughout Maryland and Virginia. Today's episode is brought to you by Scale Computing, a leader in edge computing, virtualization, and hyper-converged solutions. Visit www.scalecomputing.com to learn more. And now here's your host, Rick from Daily.
Joining us once again on the Technology Pulse podcast, we are very honored to have Alan Conboy. He's the field CTO with Scale. Alan, how are you today?
Hey, Rick, I'm doing great. I'll tell you, these are just unbelievably busy times, but I'm always happy to carve out some time to chat with you.
Well, I am thrilled that you could fit us into your schedule. Now, I have to say, you're saying unbelievably busy times, and I understand why, because there's this seismic shift occurring throughout the public sector that I had to get you on the podcast to talk about. Tell us a little more about what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. So for the last year and a half, almost 2 years, we've known that Broadcom was going to try and buy VMware. The one that everybody who virtualizes almost has been using or has up in production. Well, guess what? December 1st, that deal closed. January 8th, every single VMware partner got notification, surprise, you've been cut. And then to top it off, Broadcom took their top 2,000 customers direct. You can't get VMware from HPE. You can't get VMware from Lenovo. You can't get it from Dell. They cut everybody off. They then proceeded to go through and list 54 packages that have just been killed. They're forcing everybody to move to a subscription license. On-prem perpetual is dead. The sheer number of K-12s, folks in the .edu that their infrastructure runs on Robo, Essentials Plus, etc., they're in for a really big shock. The price increases that I'm seeing range from, 300% to, I've seen one college in the UK, pricing went from about a $30K annual renewal cost to up over 1,250%. Let that soak all the way in.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. When we had you on the podcast before, and I do highly recommend that anybody who hasn't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that episode. You already talked about the fact that VMware was never designed for educational institutions. It wasn't designed for anybody, and again, I'm saying, correct me if I'm wrong here, outside the Fortune 50.
Honest to goodness, what VMware was designed for was the guy that's got 50 HP DL380s and 5 or 6 Cisco 6509 Director class switches and enough Enterprise Plus licensing to sync a battleship and half a dozen EMC symmetrics. That's what that infrastructure was designed and built for. It was designed and built specifically to chase the hallowed halls of the Fortune 50. The thought of the SMB, the small and medium business, the thought of the mid-market, the thought of the distributed companies, that's all afterthought to those guys. Now you're going from the frying pan straight into the fire.
Incredible. And that really is the perfect analogy because it was hot before. And now we're looking at, again, never want to second guess how a company runs their business, how a company builds their business model, what they need to do. I'm not in that position, thank goodness. But I have to think that you're trading profitability for customer appreciation. It sounds like you're taking customer appreciation completely off the table and just saying, here it is, take it or leave it, and we really don't care if you take it.
Well, that's the thing. Broadcom themselves, not just through their actions, but their very words a year and a half ago, basically said point blank, we're only interested in the very largest of the very large, and literally took Dell's customers direct and HP's customers direct. And I'm not talking about the shops that might be getting their gear via the CDWs of the world. I'm talking about the guys that had the volume to buy direct, and they just took VMware completely away from them. They're locking that in, period. And they also said point blank, we don't care about the little guys. And their actions since have borne that out. If you're a VMware reseller, if you're a VAR, if you're anybody in the channel that does less than $500,000 a year in just VMware licensing, you're gone. There's a gap in there between 200,000 and 500,000 based on their own statements publicly and on their own site that they may invite you back to participate. They may not in their new partner program. But the number of folks that I know that have gotten that invite, well, you can count them on one hand and have 5 fingers left over.
So there are plenty of people that this is going to affect.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to think that there are plenty of people that it will affect that don't even know about this yet.
You know, that's the thing. I was talking to a very good friend of mine. He's been a reseller and an MSP for 25 years. He has a fairly tightly managed clientele. They're all up, happy, and running. He doesn't have any VMware deals on the beam right now. Doesn't need to. And his renewals, well, he got those all taken care of last August. So he had no reason to be paying attention to the news cycle. When I told him what was going on, sent him links across the board, LinkedIn, Reddit, our VMware, our sysadmin, of what people are having happen to them in real time right now, he was shocked at a level that I've never seen this, man. And I've seen that story repeat itself over and over since January 8th. What Broadcom is doing to the channel is unprecedented. I guess the closest analogy I can give you is imagine Microsoft being taken out of the hands of anybody but the Fortune 500 at its peak in 2005.
We wouldn't exist if that had happened.
Well, that's what Broadcom's doing. I was talking to a CEO of another tech firm last week, and the way he put it has kind of stuck with me. Broadcom is acting like a publicly traded P&E firm, almost, if you will, like the lawyer from Pretty Woman.
Oh, yeah. Jason Alexander is never, well, you thought he would never live that down, and then he became George Costanza and kind of erased people's memories of that. But it's really funny that you mentioned that, because I used to utilize that analogy, the lawyer from Pretty Woman, all the time, because it was somebody who was only interested in the kill, someone who was only interested in making as much as possible and moving on for the next instance where fresh meat appears.
It's interesting. We like to think of things in terms of our partners and our customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the impact here, like you put it, Rick, it's seismic. It's not just that. Take a look at every single one of those ecosystem partners that have built their business around VMware and, say, the mid-market. Veeam, out of the blue, announcing that they're investigating porting to Proxmox, of all things. It's not just the VAR partners, the MSPs, and the customers that are hit like a bullet with this. It's every single business that ever played in that ecosystem, because everybody that makes a move away from VMware, and call it the SMB mid-market, they can move easily in relative terms. Those very, very large shops, they're stuck with it. It'll take them 2-3 years to do anything meaningful. K-12s, I'm getting hit at a level I've never seen before with K-12s, mid-market companies coming to my company, Scale Computing, saying, hey, can you help us get out of this craziness?
And that's the thing. If you know there's a solution, then it makes it a little easier on you. But there are a lot of folks out there that don't know. They don't know anything but VMware. They've never known anything but VMware. They were programmed to think VMware is the standard. It's the bar. But now they're getting hit over the head with the bar. And you have to think there's going to be some desperation jumping in there. And this, unfortunately, is where somebody who doesn't have the best solution to the issue can come in and start talking up a storm and immediately become that. And again, I always call it a Stucky because that was his name, like the lawyer from Pretty Woman, and swoop in for the kill with something that isn't really going to be what an organization needs, but they're desperate and they're willing to listen to anything.
A pattern has emerged, and not just with VMware, over the course of the last year. For example, the fella that started these wheels in motion for Broadcom, Tom Cruise, was CRO over at Broadcom, rolling up to Hawk 10, their CEO. Shortly after putting those wheels in motion, he jumped ship. He jumped ship to a company, another P&E firm, Cloud Computing Group, and immediately bought Citrix, lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. In the same time frame, he's taken Citrix from 800 plus sellers to less than 50. It's not happening just to VMware. It appears to be something that is endemic in the mindset of those at Broadcom and those that have been at Broadcom. Let that soak all the way in. This is more than just VDI. It's more than just virtualization. It's infrastructure across the board. And what amounts to publicly traded P&E firms trying to squeeze every K-12, every mom and pop shop, every mid-market company, and especially those Fortune 500 types out of every nickel, blowing their budgets just right out of the water.
And K-12s do not historically have the best technology budgets unless something happens. We all remember, it's still fresh in our memory and the wound is still fresh, the pandemic, when every K-12 in the nation suddenly had to increase its technology budget exponentially in order to have the virtual classes, in order to be able to just continue to educate students and serve staff and faculty. It really was one of those instances where all of a sudden those budgets increased. But then we went back in person, and now the budgets are getting squeezed again. That blank check that used to come in the mail is no longer there.
No, it's not. But you know what is coming in? The support renewals and the forced move from perpetual contracts that were signed 3 years ago. Those are all being forced to be moved into either cloud-based and subscription contracts, and the numbers are skyrocketing, but budgets aren't matching it. Like I said,
they're not.
My biggest worry out of everybody out there really is the K-12s and anybody who is in the .edu space. Budgets are already hard for those guys. They absolutely are. They need the best bang for the buck there is. And these guys are squeezing them. They're squeezing them at a level that's, quite frankly, in my opinion, almost unholy.
So we have this seismic shift. We have this huge ripple effect that's about to run through. Mm-hmm. But if sci-fi movies have taught us anything, they have taught us that there's always one slim chance that you can get through all of this craziness, that you can get through all of the destruction and utter chaos that's going on around you and find that light at the end of the tunnel. And I imagine this is one of the reasons why your phone and your email have been blowing up.
You're not wrong. When we set out to create scale computing all those years ago, we set out to do the one thing that had never been done in the virtual infrastructure space to that point: build an infrastructure from the ground up in such a way that it was not only affordable for everybody, but usable and approachable for every man. And we have held to that ethos throughout. Look back across Scale's history, you don't find 2, 3, 4, 500% price increases. We don't do that. Now, admittedly, this is a bit of a shameless plug for Scale Computing, my company, but I'll tell you this much. In just the past 3 weeks, just since Broadcom started implementing these rather draconian moves of theirs, my inbound, hey, help us get out of this mess inquiries globally have shot up 5, 8x in just a couple of weeks. And I know I'm not the only company that's in that position. Any port in a storm, and fun fact, Microsoft cut off free Hyper-V last year.
And with little or no notification on that?
Yeah, there was a article they pushed around in, I want to say, June of 22, saying that there would no longer be free Hyper-V. Welcome to 2024. The world has shifted.
And so again, it's yet another roadblock, another brick wall that suddenly appears in front of budget challenged and resource challenged K-12s.
Oh, God, yes. My advice to all of the folks in .edu, to those K-12s just trying to make it through on the budgets they've got, is if you laid out your 2024 budget before December 1st of 2023, you need to go revisit that right now, because you're either going to be tripling your IT expenses right out of the gate, if not more, or you're going to need to make a move, switch away. That's not just me saying it. Like I said, spend a little time in /r/sysadmin, the subreddit on Reddit, /r/VMware on Reddit. You'll see piles of these poor folks going, oh my God, what am I going to do?
So let's help them. Let's help them understand what they're going to do. If somebody is in this scenario, and again, I know we're kind of generalizing it because every instance is going to be a little different. Every infrastructure is going to be different. There are always those subtle nuances. If somebody came to you and said, just broad brush, what is it that we would need to do? What would it take in order to leave behind the VMware debacle? And I'm comfortable calling it a debacle, and make a move that is not going to bankrupt my school system, not going to completely shut out every technology user in my organization, and not going to require me to suddenly increase my headcount exponentially with multiple FTEs to make this happen. What would you say to them?
Well, I can only speak from the perspective of what we're doing here at Scale to help folks out. First and foremost, one of the first things we did when we started really seeing what was going to happen with Broadcom is we made it trivial to import VMware virtual machines. Literally trivial. Drag and drop VMDKs into our UI. The next thing that we've done, we've implemented a massive discounting program to help people with that transition, and added access to migration tools for the stuff that needs to be done without downtime, that needs to come over out of that VMware environment and into your new Scale environment without needing to take an hours-long outage window. We're giving folks free training, certification, the whole bit. We're doing a significant discount on software services stack for every new customer implementation, for every one of these folks. But the neat part, and this kind of goes back to the core of what Scale has been since day one, is we built an architecture that doesn't need VCPs and CCNEs and SNIA certified storage engineers. The savings to K-12s, et cetera, starts to show up right there, even before you start getting into all of the other things we're doing to help folks move out of this nightmare. It's actually incredibly easy to make the move. Application stacks, our ecosystem is growing exponentially. Quite frankly, if it runs on x86, it runs on Scale.
Now, we all love an easy button. And, you know, Staples really made that whole campaign work for them with that easy button. I still know people who have those things. There
Don't
are
laugh,
going to be.
but I'm looking at one on my desk right now.
So the one that I had on my desk, I ended up gifting to somebody a while ago, because I was always telling them, you want the easy button, here's the easy button. I didn't realize I was actually giving it away. We have that easy button, and you're always going to be people who are going to be skeptical, who are going to sit there and say, well, I know you're saying that your solution, you can come in and you can do this, and that it's going to be that easy. I mean, this is not just you speaking theoretically. You have these success stories.
we've got the success stories left and right. Heck, there's videos out on YouTube of a 4-year-old little girl standing up a scale cluster, carving VMs, and doing live migrations. There's another one of our current VP of product, his second grader, doing a zero-touch implementation of a scale cluster. But more importantly than any of that, we'll put you on a live running cluster and let you see and do for yourself. Don't believe a word I say. See for yourself. Drive it for yourself.
Like a test drive.
Absolutely.
Because
we'll show you how easy it is to bring in VMware workloads. We'll turn you loose with applications and have at.
Because you never want to buy the vehicle until you've driven it.
Anybody who ever bought a car on just the salesman's spiel deserves exactly the car they got.
And deserves to push it
Indeed.
when it stops running and stops moving.
Enjoy that Yugo.
We are dating ourselves with that, but oh my goodness, I still remember that.
Oh, yeah.
What was the big take on the Yugo? Between the muffler and the bottom of the car, they said there was a heat shield that simply turned out to be aluminum foil.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll get talking points out of anybody in the industry you talk to in sales. And I can't blame them. That's their job. But I don't let my sales teams act that way at all, ever. My sales teams are encouraged heavily to be a partner to our customers, not disappear at the close of a PO. And we carry that ethos through everything we do over here. There's a reason that our NPS scores are in the mid-90s and have been for a decade and a half.
And of course, for those unfamiliar, NPS Net Promoter Score, that's really seeing it's not how people rank you, it's how people would recommend you and become that champion for you.
Yeah, it's interesting the way they do that. And it's very different than any other ranking system, right? They ask customers, independent of scale or any of the other folks. Nutanix uses them. Tons of folks use NPS scores because they want to track how well they're doing with their customers, right? So do we. So the NPS score is a 1 to 10 ranking. To get a positive NPS score, it's not 5 or above. It's either a 9 or a 10. I would absolutely recommend. 6 to 8 is considered neutral, no lift. Anything below 6 is considered negative. So to have an NPS score in the mid-90s is through the roof. Apple uses NPS. The last time I checked, their NPS score was somewhere in the low 40s. That should give you some context on what I mean by we actually care about our customers. And that's not just a talking point. We actually really do. Both my CEO, Jeff Reedy, and myself will periodically jump into sales calls or just arbitrarily reach out to customers and say, hey, just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. It's because we care. When's the last time you got an email or a call from Michael Dell?
This is true. That's not likely to happen. You're not going to hear from the folks in the C-suite for many of these companies, for many of these solution providers. And so having that on your end is certainly something that is a plus, knowing that you can have that type of access.
Absolutely. You know, from my perspective, this chat that you and I are having, Rick, is less about scale computing. Yeah, we have a solution to help you get out of this. Absolutely. But it's really, from my perspective at least, coming from a place of I cannot believe what the de facto standard for virtualization for the last 2 decades in every single industry globally is doing to their customers. I'm frankly shocked. And like I mentioned earlier, folks in K-12, man, my heart goes out to them.
So we were talking before about your phone and your email blowing up and how this debacle with VMware is keeping you incredibly busy.
Indeed.
And so if I were someone who suddenly I'm hearing this and I'm realizing, oh my goodness, I've got to do something and I've got to do something now. We don't want anybody to think that the wait list is months upon months upon months.
No, it's not. Yeah, I'll give you some insight into this. Volume of inbound requests here just to scale. I mentioned they're up by an order of magnitude. Even my executive team, myself included, my CEO included, are jumping in to field those calls in real time to help folks out. So it's not get in a queue and wait. We're also working feverishly to empower all of our partners and the sudden influx of VMware partners historic coming to get out of the sinking ship. So no, your wait time, non-existent. And I'll tell you what, my own email address. Email me direct if you've got the need. It's alan@scalecomputing.com.
And who else is going to give you their email address? I mean, most of the time when people do that, I used to love I forget which influencer it was. I think it might have been Gary V on LinkedIn, where he was telling people, here's my real phone number. Go ahead and text me and I'll text you back. Now, you know, it's not him texting you back. you
this
know,
one is me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the difference.
The last 2 weekends in a row, I haven't had a weekend because I'm trying to help folks. Everybody from companies providing trains and public transit in Canada to folks in Indonesia that are gobsmacked at the renewal quote because they had a quote in place in December. As of January 8th, it was invalidated. And the new one coming out, well, it jumped by about 300%.
Well, let me just tell you this. I can say that I can say that anybody listening to this episode has gotten schooled on some really, really big impacts. And so again, we want to make sure that they understand that the seismic shift has started. The shock waves are heading out everywhere, but we have a way for you to navigate through the shock waves and come out on the other side virtually unscathed.
I'll go you better than unscathed. We've always been better than VMware at making an admin's life an order of magnitude easier. That's honestly where our bread has been buttered since 2009. Once you make the jump, not only are you no longer subject to the vagaries of Broadcom, but you're going to find out that you can do things like go from spending 5 or 6 days a month in outage windows dealing with VMware issues to less than 1 day a year. That's common with scale. You just don't have to think about it. It gets the job done every time without having to fool around with it.
And we love things that get the job done.
And they'll find themselves in a much better place all the way around.
And with plenty of other things to think about, to have one less thing to worry about.
Oh, yeah. In today's world, in all of the 2020s thus far, one less thing to worry about is absolutely golden.
Invaluable. Alan, thanks again for joining us. Amazing information, and one of those times where we can again say this is going to help so many people. And thank you for helping to get the word out.
I'm here to help. My entire team is here to help. Partners like you guys, absolutely. We'll do whatever needs doing to help these people get out of this, as my youngest daughter would say, Travisham mockery they're being slammed with right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Technology Pulse, and can't wait to have you back again.
Look forward to it, Rick, and it's always great talking with you.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to remind you of some important legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Daily Technology Pulse podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Daily Computers or its partners. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of Daily Computers Inc. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us at www.daly.com. The Daily Technology Pulse podcast will be back with more exciting discussions on the latest in technology. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.